amazing Australians and the story of their lives. You're tuned to Lots to Chat About with Rosemary Peterswald.
Hello and welcome, listeners. You loved listening to her last time. In fact, the last two times that she has been chatting to me. So here she is again, the wonderful Sallyanne Atkinson, only female Lord Mayor of Brisbane, and so much more. I could think of no better person to come on and chat to us about the hype surrounding the Brisbane Olympics and, of course, the upcoming elections. Welcome, Sallyanne.
Thank you, Rosemary. Great to be here again.
Lovely to have you back. Now, Sallyanne, during your time as Lord Mayor, you led Brisbane's bid for the Olympic Games of 1992, and you were subsequently chair of the Australian Olympic Committee's Sport for All Commission and the committee to organise the Sydney Olympics, and, of course, Deputy Mayor of the Sydney Olympic Athletes Village. So you're certainly well qualified to chat about these coming Olympics. But before we get into the nitty-gritty of how they're going to work, first of all, do you think it was a good thing that Brisbane has won? I mean, if you look round across the world, for some cities it's been absolutely magnificent, but for others like Athens or whatever, it wasn't so good. But you, of course, had Expo, which put Brisbane on the map. So I would imagine that these coming Olympics is going to do much the same, despite costing a lot of money.
Well, perhaps even more than Expo, because that was a wonderful event and really put the city on the map nationally, if not internationally. But the great thing about the Olympics in 2032 is that the legacy of that for young people in Queensland who will have sporting facilities like we've never had before. It will boost the economy, not just of Brisbane, but of the whole state of Queensland, because when we talk about where the venues are, they're right up Cairns, all over Toowoomba, all over the place. And so everybody is going to benefit. And yes, they will cost a lot of money, and all the way through, even when Brisbane was bidding, because initially when I was in opposition, I was a bit sort of lukewarm about, our city bidding.
Right.
But when I thought about it and talked to people who were expert and worked out things out, no, I thought it was good then, and I think it will be fantastic now. And of course, all this building that's going to go on, the work that's going to create for workers.
Yes.
I mean, the employment that's going to create.
Yes.
The fantastic buildings we will have in our city, which will be, sent worldwide. I was just looking at a video at the launch the other day of the sailing off the Whitsundays, which you, of course, know about yourself, having done that.
Absolutely.
For those photographs, for that film to be going around the world, people will just look at it and say, wow, I want to be there, I want to be part of that.
Exactly, because they are, yes, all around Queensland. They're going to have various sports. For instance, they're having the rowing up in Mackay, isn't it? No, Rockhampton. Sorry.
In spite of the crocodiles.
In spite, I was going to ask you, and the tide and the crocodiles.
Well, that's I don't want to put down the experts who've complained about the crocodiles and the tides, but thousands of Queensland children who are rowers have been up there rowing on that river over many, many years, and I haven't heard of anybody having any interaction with a crocodile or the tide being bad, and I'm sure they'll sort things out. I mean, the great thing about having the lead time that we did have, 11 years from announcement of the Games, that these problems are identified and we sort them out in good Australian fashion. We've always been a country that's very good at managing things. And, when you talked about Athens, yes, bit of a shambles. Perhaps they didn't do the legacy thing right. Sydney was such a well-developed city that I don't think Sydney really benefited from the Olympics in the way that we're going to.
Right.
But it's really a matter of, this word legacy keeps getting bandied around, but legacy really means what's going to happen afterwards and what's going to be left.
Exactly. So I think what you're saying, Sallyanne, is that most of the venues that are going to be built for the Olympics will, in fact, be used by many of us for many, many years afterwards.
Your grandchildren, my grandchildren, all the venues. I mean, this is one of the stipulations of the International Olympic Committee, that there has to be something left
Yes.
We're not just talking about a wonderful sporting event for a couple of weeks.
Right.
And so what we have here, we've got, this new stadium, highly contentious, being built
In Victoria Park. Yes.
We've got tennis at Milton.
Yes.
No, not at Milton, at tennis. I keep thinking Milton. Tennis at Tennyson. But we've got, the basketball down at the Gold Coast.
Yes.
We've got, as I said, the sailing up at the Whitsundays, but also in Townsville.
Right.
The equestrian events are going to be in Toowoomba, which makes a lot of sense because, the gateway to the outback, country people who come there for those equestrian events will then want to go bush.
But do you think the transport structure that we've got at the moment will cope for all of this? And, quite often people go into the Olympics not just to watch one sport, is it? It's to watch many sports. So we'll have airlines, going from Townsville to Brisbane to the Gold Coast and then trains to Toowoomba or Gold Coast or whatever. So do you think we're going to cope in that regard?
Absolutely. And, we do tend to be a bit fear-mongering perhaps about transport. I remember when the Commonwealth Games was at the Gold Coast in 2018.
Yes.
And we were being told, there's going to be so much traffic, don't go down, don't bother going down. I went down, not to look at a sporting event, but to meet a friend who was coming up. Absolute breeze going down the highway, hardly a car on the road.
Yes.
So Sydney people stayed away.
Well, that was the problem. We went up to the Sydney Olympics from Tasmania, where we were at the time, and they were, beside themselves because, in actual fact, a lot of the restaurants and the streets and whatever were empty because everyone was told to leave, and they did leave.
Yes, so I hope we take note of that. I hope we learn the lessons from other places, and I'm sure we will. Let's be sensible and let's be reasonable about it. And it is a worry because during Expo, one of the complaints of restaurants in other places was that people weren't coming into Queen Street, people weren't going to other parts of the city because they were going to Expo. And, of course, we could all eat at Expo, and we did.
Right. So, well, hopefully we've learned by lessons. But now one of the other things, you were Deputy Mayor of the Sydney Olympics Athletes Village. So now they're looking at housing the athletes in various villages around the areas, from the Gold Coast to all round. How do you think that will work?
Well, I think it will work. And in Sydney, of course, the equestrians were out somewhere out of Sydney. I can't remember exactly where, but not just the horses, but the people. The main athletes' village, I think, is a stroke of brilliance, which wasn't discussed beforehand.
Right.
But it's going to be at the RLA showgrounds, which means that those athletes, because they're fit people, will be able to walk to the main stadium in Victoria Park, and they'll be able to walk to the swimming and the diving on Gregory Terrace.
Yes.
So everything is going to be close. But I think the villages that are sort of in different places are things to do with different sport. I mean, obviously, athletes who are sailing up at Townsville or the Whitsundays will be living up there. There's an athletes' village up on the Sunshine Coast at Maroochydore to deal with the things that are there. No, I think that'll work pretty well. And I'm sure there's been a lot of consultation with athletes. I mean, this is not just, a rush of blood to the head by the Premier. There's been a lot of discussion with the people who really know a lot. I mean, the great tragedy of the last couple of years was it was a case of, too many cooks spoiled the broth. Now they've told the cooks to get out of the kitchen.
Yes.
And the Cabinet, they have made a decision. So we've got a decision. And even though there were bits and pieces that people mightn't like, well, there's plenty of time. We can do it better. I mean, lots of people I know were very worried about Victoria Park, giving up the park. And I said, well, it's no use trying to stop it because it's happening. The important thing now is to shape it as well as we can. It has not been announced yet what part of Victoria Park the stadium will be. Will it be up sort of on the top where the restaurant and function centres are? Somebody the other day said, no, it'll be down the bottom. I don't think it will be. But once we know, then we can have input in making sure it happens, properly and well. You down at Labrador, you're going to get the hockey stadium.
Yes.
Won't that be fun?
Exactly. That's exactly right. But just going back to the athletes' village again, are we going to have cardboard beds like they had in Paris? I thought that was hilarious.
Well, it was hilarious. And what made me reminded me of the Sydney Athletes Village. You know, as you say, I was deputy mayor. They had these huge bowls of condoms everywhere.
Right.
In fact, I took a couple, brought some home with me. Not that I've ever actually needed to use one. Good Catholic mother of 5.
Yes.
But I wondered how the beds. So obviously there was a lot of activity going to happen in the villages, and I wondered, did they not think about the cardboard beds, the dangers involved?
I don't know. I never heard of anybody actually falling out of one or whatever.
No, so I think that'll be right.
Yeah,
I think that'll be okay. Condoms as well.
Exactly. Going back to Victoria Park, now they're going to drop a swimming pool in, aren't they?
No, they're going to that was one of the
oh, right.
No, that was one of the proposals.
Yes.
That they were going to drop a swimming pool in around Roma Street Station, that Brisbane Live proposal.
Right. Yes.
That Harvey Lister, who's been so involved in all this stuff for so long, was involved in. But no, that's been scrapped now, and the new proposal is for a $650 million aquatic centre up on Gregory Terrace, across the road from the school where the Centenary Pool is at the moment. And my sort of small concern, but I shall wait for a minute or two, is the Centenary Pool, which was built way back in the late 50s to celebrate the centenary of the state, is heritage listed. It was designed by a very famous architect called Jim Birrell, and that must be incorporated within the new design, and I'm sure it will be.
Right.
But so there's all sorts of things like that people might not have. No, but that's where the swimming will be. And literally, as I said, a stone's throw from the Athletes Village, and a stone's throw from Victoria Park if you're a fit person.
And as you say, what an incredible legacy then to leave Brisbane, isn't it? And for the next generations to come.
Yeah, and it means that we'll be able to have, national championships that we weren't able to have before because we didn't have the right facilities. There was a concern about when the Gabba was, going to be repurposed or whatever, that the cricket wouldn't be able to be played anywhere in Brisbane now. But now we've established that,
yes,
the cricket can be played at Victoria Park. So all the cricketing people are very happy, and the AFL.
Yes, Sallyanne's actually sitting there with that terrific photographs and map of all these.
You've sprung. I thought people might think I just knew it in my head.
No. But she does know it all in her head. But looking at the map of the various stadiums and venues and whatever, it is impressive, isn't it?
Yes, well, this appeared in the Courier Mail, and the Courier Mail has been tremendously supportive of the games, which is great because we've just got to be positive. I mean, there's a few negatives, of course, but we can fix those. And this came out in the Courier Mail the next morning, so of course I kept it because it's got all the detail, including the money that's been spent on everything, which is quite astronomical, but the position of everything. And as I said, I think, in my view, the positions of all these various facilities are fixed, but there can be sort of various changes on the way through.
Right.
A little bit of tinkering at the edges.
Which with each one, and as you say, which I think is very important, that they're all accessible from each other, aren't they?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, when I was in Sydney for those games, the Athletes Village was at Homebush,
right,
railway station, but that was way out from. You had to sort of really struggle hard to get to the swimming, say, or
yes.
I don't think I went to the swimming at all because it was probably too hard, and I had things to do in the Athletes Village.
Well, I caught the train out to the village, and it was a long way. But I must admit there was a tremendous atmosphere coming back on it afterwards. Everybody sort of had a couple of drinks, and either the athlete had won or hadn't. But it was fun.
And I think one of the great things that happens with the Olympics, it happened with Expo here in Brisbane, the volunteers.
Yes.
We seem to be very, very good in Australia at volunteering for big events. And there were so many volunteers in Sydney, and their role was to make people feel welcome. I had a Chinese friend who'd actually been born in Sydney, and he said twice he was accosted by a volunteer saying, "Welcome to our country. I hope you're having a good time." And he said, "I didn't have the heart to explain that I actually grew up here."
Lovely. I was actually just talking to somebody who crossed my path a moment ago who said, "I hope I can be a volunteer." And that's what so many people do hope, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. Well, and there's even... I the other night, conducted, would you believe, the Queensland Youth Orchestra.
Oh, right.
Yes,
wow.
Well, another career first.
Yes.
But one of the things that I said to them, these are all kids aged between, we'll say, 12 and 20-ish, that many of them will be part of the Arts Festival. They will be of the right age. Now, if you're 10 now, you'll be 17 sort of thing. And the Arts Festival, which we must never lose sight of, the Cultural Festival is very much a part of the Olympics, as specified by the IOC.
Oh, okay.
So we have to have lots of good arts things going on. And we'll have our new theatre over at South Bank and lots of other things too.
Absolutely magnificent for Brisbane. Look, I see where the government's sort of thinking of replacing a number of members of the Olympic Committee, making it a bit smaller. Now, I remember you saying to me quite a while ago, you said that the original Olympic Committee, of course, many of the people probably won't be there when the actual Olympics come. And that's probably true, isn't it?
Well, the opening ceremony will happen on my 90th birthday.
Oh, right.
From which I intend to be there, perhaps not carrying the torch or anything. Yes, but that always happens, of course, in everything. Governments initiate things and then they're gone by the time that the things happen. And the IOC has put an age limit, I can't remember what it is, on their membership. So, yes, people will have to stand down. And the committee, I'm not sure where we're at with the organising committee, because the initial committee, there was lots of jockeying and state government and council people and federal people and people from the Gold Coast and the Sunshine Coast. I mean, they're all going to be part of it and they all want to have a say, and they should have a say.
Exactly, that's right, because so much of it, as you say, is going to be in their back
other
garden.
Places. And when this was announced, some of the regions were sort of carrying on because there were 9 local mayors that were all involved in getting the games.
Yes.
And, there shouldn't be the Brisbane Games, it should be Queensland Games, which they will be. But under IOC rules, the Olympics are awarded to a city.
Right.
And that's very, important to remember. So, you had the Games in Paris, you will have the Games in Los Angeles.
But the whole country benefits.
People got involved. Well, so the Games in Paris, they had sailing, I think, down at Marseille. They had some of that whitewater rafting stuff was elsewhere. I don't know where everything was.
Yeah.
But because of television, I mean, now people don't have to go, do they? People don't actually have to go. They can watch it and see it. And many sports, I think, are better to look at on television. I mean, I prefer to watch tennis on television than to actually go there and sit there.
You see so much more, don't you? You see it all up close rather than being stuck at the top of a stadium somewhere. Now, you're listening to Lots to Chat About. I'm Rosemary Peterswald, and my wonderful guest today is Sallyanne Atkinson, the past Lord Mayor of Brisbane, and so much more. So, Sallyanne, now we've talked about the Olympics, but of course that's not the only thing that's happening right now. We've got the elections coming. We've got an announcement. We know the date. And it's pretty much a full-on campaign on both sides at the moment. Now, I know you stood for federal parliament at one stage, so I'd just like to get a little behind the scenes of, what that was like. I mean, at the moment, in Melbourne, I think particularly, it's got a little bit nasty where people are, or husbands of candidates are pulling posters down and whatever of the opposition. But was it anything like that in your time, or was it a little bit more genteel?
Oh, no, it's never been genteel. I once worked as a researcher for Jim Killen, who was a federal defence minister and a great personality and a great character. And he used to do his electioneering from the back of a truck when people would throw tomatoes at him.
Oh, right.
So that was not genteel at all. No. I get just a feeling this time around that it seems to be a bit petty. There's a lot of pettiness going on. I haven't heard from anybody, although I did hear from Peter Dutton this morning. He was doing a big press conference in Melbourne with a bit of vision for the country. What kind of a country do we want?
Yes.
This is what young people are saying to me. Young people are much more ideological, or idealistic, not ideological,
yes.
Much more idealistic, much more aspirational. They want to know what kind of a country we're having. And that's one of the great things about the Olympics. It's something to look forward to and to aspire to.
Something positive, isn't it, rather than all the doom and gloom of
yes, and
climate change.
So,
and all that.
Yes. I think the election is very important. I think we have to make sure that people enrol. We have to make sure that young people enrol. I'm not in favour of minority parties, particularly ones that don't do what they say they're going to do. I'm greatly in favour of the two-party system, which we've had, because at least it gets things done. You can manage the country. Yes. And I'm afraid that a lot of the minority people we've seen in Parliament just tend to be spoilers.
Well, actually, I was going to ask you that, because now there are, there's a lot of independent parties, but then there's a lot of independent just candidates, like the Teals and, various. Were there that many when back in the...
No.
There was mainly just the two parties, wasn't there?
Yeah. I mean, if we did some research, that I don't... Just trying to think when the first independent went into Parliament.
Right.
In living memory, certainly, but certainly no. Back in the day, no. It was, we accepted that we had a two-party system.
Yes.
And depending on your party, certainly, I was a Liberal. I mean, I am a Liberal, but I was represented in the council, and we could say what we thought, which is one of the reasons I've always been attracted. In fact, on another note, Rosemary, we're in the middle of my 40th anniversary of becoming Lord Mayor.
Oh, really?
Yes,
right.
Which was the 30th of March, and then we went in. We took up office on the 14th or the 15th of April. And that was the first time that the Liberal Party, a political party, had got involved in local politics, because the Labor Party was always involved, right back from 1925, when we had the first ever Greater Brisbane Council. Yeah. But then the first mayor, who was elected just after that, was an independent Conservative, but he was a businessman's party. Yes. And people wanted good management, and so that's what they got. But when we in 1978 was the beginning of the Liberal Party's involvement
in local elections, in
local
council
elections.
Yes.
Now, of course, I'm sure you have lots of candidates, lots of people
yes.
in your local council, say on the Gold Coast, who are Liberal or Labor or whatever, but they don't run on that party ticket.
Right.
And the good thing, I think, about knowing what party people belong to is you know where you stand.
Yes.
You know what their thinking process is.
You know something I can't understand, and I'm sure some of our listeners are the same. If you stand for Parliament and you say that you're standing for a particular party, and somebody has elected you on the understanding that whether it's Labor or whether it's Liberal or whether it's the Greens or whatever, but they have elected you because of the party. And then you suddenly decide, no, I'm actually going to not be part of that party. I'm going to be an independent, and I'm going to stand on my... what do you feel about that?
Oh, I think it's absolutely immoral.
Yes.
You almost should, hand it back. Because
I would have thought so. You'd need another election.
Yes, people elected you. It's very arrogant to think that you're so important and so clever that they were electing you for yourself. That obviously is part of it.
Yes.
But they certainly knew you were Liberal or National or, and that doesn't seem to attract the opprobrium that it used to. There were two Liberal members of Parliament back in the 70s, I suppose it was, can't remember exactly, who switched to the National Party.
Right.
Well, people were scathing in their condemnation of that.
Yes.
Both of those men, who I knew quite well and liked, were surprised at the you're just not allowed to switch parties. And it was funny because my mother on the Gold Coast was a great supporter of Russ Hinds, and she was always wanting me to join the National Party.
Right.
And I said, no, Mum.
Yeah.
I belong to the Liberal Party and I want to, and that's what I've been elected as.
Yes.
There's no way I could possibly change now.
Right. But they do now.
But they do, and nobody seems to carry that lady in West Australia. Just all of a sudden now she's somebody else. But
exactly. Well, Jackie Lambie in Tasmania,
yes.
And a lot of the independents, of course, hold the balance of power, and so they're being constantly courted by the main parties, aren't they? In order to get them to vote for what they want.
Well, that's right, and they're also being courted, I suspect, by interest groups. By lobby, by people who have one particular barrow to push,
yes.
and then they think, well, if I get onto the independents, and they'll, take up that cause,
yes,
that'll be success, and that's what I think is dangerous.
Yeah.
The Teals I've always rather liked because they were community-based
yes.
people in the first place.
Right.
The Greens I used to like. When Bob Brown was there, and you come from Tasmania,
Yep.
the Franklin Dam,
But that's not like that anymore, is it?
But
No.
it's not like that anymore. And I'm, as I was saying to a group of young people the other day, look, I don't have a clothes dryer, and I catch the bus everywhere. I'm much greener than most of you. Because
That's exactly right. But yes, it'll be interesting to see. I'm sure our listeners would like to have a little bit more idea of what you've been doing lately. I know that since we, last spoke, you've had an overseas trip and you went to Europe, and then, of course, you went to Belfast, discovering your father's heritage,
Yes.
and then you went to Colombo to go back with your sister to discover where she was born. So tell me a little bit about that, or us a little bit about
It's a
that.
funny thing. I don't know whether this happens as you get older,
Yes.
that you become more interested in your roots, in your heritage. And certainly, as I said, I can't get, my grandchildren don't seem to be overly. But I did
But they will be.
But they will be. And I
Yes.
did take a granddaughter, came with me to Belfast, and we saw my grandmother's grave,
Yes.
which was interesting because her name was May,
Yes.
but on her grave she's called Mary.
Right.
Mary Robertson, and then one of my sisters said, "Oh, well, perhaps, Mary was a Catholic name, and we were a Protestant family."
Used to be the Irish president was a Mary Robinson.
Yeah, always for a couple of presidents, was Mary, and then I went to, as you say, I went back to Sri Lanka because my youngest, the sister next to me, was born there 80 years ago, and she hadn't been back since we left in our younger years.
Right.
And that was just fantastic to be able to go to the hospital where she was born.
Oh, how wonderful.
Which I remember because I was 3 at the time and very cross about her being born.
Yeah.
I can remember being a very jealous older sister. So.
But how wonderful that you both were able to go back. Sallyanne, I had so much more that I was going to talk to you about, but I'm looking at my time thing, Paul. We've run out of time, haven't we?
We certainly have.
We have. But there's a couple of things, and I'm going to have to get you back again because very quickly, one of the things I wanted to talk about is your role on the Brain Institute and how Alzheimer's is affecting us all, and particularly a close acquaintance of you and my at the moment, and what happens with all the carers who are caring for those. But we'll have to leave that for another time. So,
and I talked once, we talked about getting Wally Lewis.
Yes. Oh, yes.
And
yeah.
I was with him the other day having a bit of a chat.
Oh, wonderful.
It wasn't the right place to ask him, but I'm going to follow that up.
Oh,
get Wally
wonderful.
on. Yes.
I read another article about him and his epilepsy, which is close to my heart as well, so for a family member. Sallyanne, thank you so much for being our guest today, or my guest today. As normal, it is an absolute pleasure to have you here, so thank you.
It's fun to be here. Lovely to have a chat.
And thank you, Paul. And Lots to Chat About has been recorded in the studios of for RPH Reading Radio Brisbane for syndication around Australia.
Great friends and great chats. That was another Lots to Chat About with Rosemary Peterswald. Stay tuned next week for another amazing chat.